have our next speaker here. I have, since we only met yesterday, I have to sort of check my notes for your bio. I have them here. I should have got them ready.
Introduce myself.
Do you want to do that?
I can do it. So.
Okay, so your name is? First up.
So my name is Julia Golebiowski, and I just finished my master degrees here in Berlin at the Freie Universität, studies in future science, and I'm also a co-founder of the network Zukunftsforscherinnen.de, which is for female future scientists. So today, I want to tell you, or I want to give you a broad overview about how future studies and innovation management can help in a VUCA world. So this is our world. It's full of data, full of connections, and full of interdependencies. So it's pretty hard to get an overview here, right? So welcome to the VUCA world. VUCA means volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Volatile means we live in a world that is constantly changing, becoming more unstable, and serious changes are hard to predict. So the easiest example for our volatile world is the stock market, or even more, the crypto market. Oh, sorry. It's getting harder and harder to predict oncoming events. So it's pretty hard for organizations to plan their investments, their strategies, and their developments, because no one knows what comes next. So we all know the feeling of living in uncertainty, especially during the last 2 years. So it was even uncertain when to get the next haircut. Sorry. And the world is complex. So everything seems to be in interdependency. Causes and effects are hard to anticipate and to understand. One example of a complex world we are living in is shown when the ship Ever Given was stuck in the Suez Canal. And like almost the entire trade world was stuck and had to deal with the consequences for weeks. And the world is ambiguous. So nowadays, it seems hard to say that something is just like that. Information can get interpreted in several ways. So one example is that we always tell that we live in a post-factum world. So now, why is a VUCA world a problem? Because all those rapid changes, the various uncertainties, and the consequences that are hard to anticipate, they lead to confusion, fear, and difficult planning. So it's a little bit like being in the jungle in the middle of a storm. You never know what comes next, and this feeling, you doesn't really feel safe in this surrounding. So luckily, we have two disciplines who work with that feeling of uncertainty and who's working with what comes next. It's innovation management and future studies. Both disciplines work with something non-existing. So the aim of innovation management is to minimize uncertainties through planning and controlling. On the other hand, future studies sees uncertainties as a core character of the future, or of futures. And the aim is more to make uncertainties visible. So it enables us to work under uncertainties and within complex situations. So one way to deal with VUCA is using VUCA. But this time it means vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. So visions for more focus. A clear vision can help to keep focus in a rapidly changing world and provides orientation. In future studies, images of the futures are a common method to think about visions. Together with future workshops by Jung, desired futures can get developed. So new strategies and steps can evolve. A scenario process aims to get diverse visions. These visions arise from the consideration of various influencing factors. And the scenario process really keeps the focus on the interconnectivity. So it really deals with this complex situation. Understanding through information. There's a really high need of information to see and understand the current changes. This information must be processed and evaluated very carefully. So in strategic foresight, we are using the weak signals. So the weak signals are the first signs of change. And the earlier organizations get those information about those changes, the better they can adapt on early stage. Innovation management is all about information gathering, so they can get a better futures knowledge. They observe the incorporate environment and have a look at those in interdisciplinary teams. So here's a quote. In a VUCA world, you need to be very clear about where you're going, but very flexible about how you get there. So you need a clarity for direction, so you know where to go to. Using backcasting can help to a more open way of thinking, because you're not stuck in the present problems and standards. Without the strong influences from current trends, openness of the future can suddenly be possible. Another possibility or way of clarity is futures literacy. It exposes assumptions and conceptions of imaginary futures which lead to hidden needs in the present. So it helps for a better understanding of connected systems and reflection of current images of the future. Agility for the best products. So in innovation management, it's all about speed and timing. New developments has to be adjusted into companies' processes as fast as possible to stay in the market. One big aspect of innovation management is that it's very useful for agility. It's very useful for agility, the habit of prototyping, because so it's the only way, or it's one of the ways to test new products, new processes, and services. From the future studies aspect, again, weak signals are quite important for agility, so because as earlier you get the information, the earlier you can handle. And wildcards can help to anticipate how to act in extreme situations before they occur. And scenario planning shows that openness to the process is possible. So it needs a toolkit to survive in a VUCA world. I told you now a little bit about future studies and innovation management, but as you can see, it can be useful to take a step back and also have a look on different disciplines, just as design thinking, resilience research, change management, sociology, and gaming, as we just saw before. Serious gaming can be a beautiful way to create a safe space to think in alternatives and to play with uncertainties. So the right mindset for crazy times is really needed. So first of all, you have to accept uncertainties. There will always be uncertainties, so there's no other way to accept them. And if you want to do it even better, you don't only accept them, but you try to use them. So that's called dilemma flipping, turning an obstacle into an opportunity. And you have to be very open to the result and the process, because every time you're planning, some new information can come in, and everything that you have planned must have been, maybe it's not the real time anymore for this plan that you made, so you have to readjust. The more you work in interdisciplinary teams, the more backsides you have to get in different signs of the informations. As well as using creativity and gaming can broaden your openness for futures. So this is also a small sum up of this conversation that I will take with me, and I want to join with you. When living in uncertain times, always keep in mind to embrace uncertainties, embrace connections, because as we also saw before, the crazier the world gets, the more we want to connect with our other human beings. And embrace diverse futures, because there's not only this one future, and embrace change. So thank you, and good luck in this crazy world.
Thank you very much. So we have about 15 minutes before the break, and we have 3 speakers, so that we can put them on the grill and ask them all hard questions in the next 5 minutes. Do you think it would be possible for us to see Ali on the screen so that we're actually together? That would be wonderful. What I might want to ask both of you if you would like to sit here in the front, then I will give you a mic each. And I will use this one. Yes. So first of all, if there are any questions from the people in the room, I would like very much to hear from you or comments. We have, the socioeconomic subject, I think, is actually a very important one. And we've had different scales of zooming in these discussions, and I'm keen to hear if there's anything you would like to add or suggest or ask of one of our 3 speakers today. We have a quiet room. Lucky we have, maybe you have questions for each other. That was my next step. Oh, did I miss a hand? Yes, please go ahead. Yeah. You're going to have to, yeah.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. Just something very quickly, also because the slide was very fast, so maybe I missed something. This is I want to clarify. While speaking about Belgium and the apathy of young generation, you mentioned corruption within the Belgian state or government. But then, as an example, you mentioned the change of political alliance and the not fulfillment of electoral promise. I'm not sure if this is corruption. I mean, speaking about corruption, I will think about a crime. In this sense, I can understand that this creates a little bit of loss of expectation and of faith in the government. But in my opinion, I'm not an expert on this. I'm a lawyer. That's why it's corruption. Okay, it's a little bit. But no. But my feeling is that it's maybe more the feeling of young generation that they cannot have an impact, because maybe you vote for a party that you believe in, and then they totally change. We have in Italy a 5-star movement. They started big fire, doing a lot of things, and today many people realize that they're not really keeping the promise. And these, I think, say, okay, maybe I should not engage, I should not use my time. And, that this sense of apathy. And maybe it's a little bit a global trend that the establishment is getting far away from the citizen. And so how can we change that in the future, maybe? I don't know if it's possible. Thank you.
Yes. So yes, I agree very much. And I think in Belgium, same as in much of the world, this idea of the ivory tower is very much alive. I would even dare to say that the European Union highlights that very strongly. And the European Union, many of their institutions are in Brussels, so that adds to that idea even further. With corruption, perhaps that's a bit too strong of a word for the examples I gave. It goes further as well. It goes to the salary that is received by politicians for what people find very little work. In other words, we never see them in the Senate or in the Chamber or in the House of Representatives. They're never present, so people wonder, what are they doing? But it also goes further. All of a sudden, political parties present politicians who were not even on the electoral list, so people couldn't vote for them, and then all of a sudden they find their way into the cabinet or into the ministry, which is very strange. And so we summed up that entire experience as corruption, but perhaps you're correct. Perhaps not. Perhaps it is a form of corruption, and we've just become so accustomed to it that we no longer see it as such. But yes, but definitely the apathy towards the ivory tower is very, very strong. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Kim. Do we have any other questions from the room here? Yes, lovely.
Thank you. Hello. I'd like to ask a question to Ellie. So Ellie, you depicted very well how dark the room we are in looks like, and how urgent it is to have political action to address climate change. And I was wondering, given how that is, how challenging it has become to see a possible bright future or possible good futures, what is then, how can we bring policymakers and citizens to imagine possible bright futures, given how many people are already, especially young generations, distrustful of political stakeholders, and how they are fearful, actually, of possible futures, you know?
Yeah, it is a good question and most probably a difficult one to answer, but I do think that we need to meet in between. So there needs to be a top-down endeavors from policy side and from the politicians, and also a bottom-up movement initiated by communities, by us ourselves, so we can meet in between. Definitely there are some, we had the discussion yesterday, there are some countries now and that have been engaged in foresight and in futures thinking since decades, and there are new ones that are implementing these exercises and involving also society in their futures thinking. So it's definitely, I think, up to us in whichever function we have, whichever let's say role we have in society and profession to trigger this and to engage in these exercises, and to, as I also had in my presentation, to connect to communities that are already existing, to contribute to trigger and to work with young people, either as a mother or as a teacher, or to work with young people and give them the tools that are existing to engage. We see also the Fridays for Future, so encouraging children really to go to the streets and to fight for their futures and for their rights, and I think everyone needs to find his or her own way how to engage, and but we do have to change right now. So it is in small steps or in bigger functions as having companies or having special powerful roles as professionals. I think it's up to everyone, and yeah, there is no solution for all, I think, and I'm afraid of. I hope I answered a little bit your question.
Thank you. I believe that was satisfying. So can we, yeah, there you are. The third question. I'm so hoping it's for the for the others speaker.
Actually, for Kim. I'm sorry. Thank you to the three of you for your presentations. My question is actually to Kim. You mentioned in the shuffle game, one of the scenarios was collapse, and that the collapse was actually not necessarily a bad thing because it could actually represent, regenerative, new beginnings, and etc. So my question is, in your kind of scenario planning, was there ever the consideration of the end of a social innovation NGO? Like, is there an underlying assumption there that it will still exist, let's say, in 20, 30 years, and if so, what were the thoughts behind that? I'm curious to know.
That's a very interesting question, and it's an easy question to answer because it doesn't just relate to the collapse scenario. The social innovation NGO we worked with, their end goal, whenever that is to completely vanish from the landscape, so that social innovation, social engagement has become so ingrained in society, almost as evident as the air we breathe, that they will no longer be necessary. So in a sense, that utopian thinking, if we may call it such, is wonderful. We'll see if it can be accomplished. But so within the game, we did want to see what their relevance would be in every of those possible scenarios and how strongly their role would become. And it's interesting because you may assume that in one scenario they would become a lot more needed than in another, but often that's not the case. Often in a scenario, for example, in discipline where social innovation is part of the governance structure, you would assume there is no longer a need for another organization like an NGO to step in. And yet there is, because of the community of distrust that is created, a parallel structure has to come into being to take care of those who society has rejected. So it's interesting, and I'm very hopeful that they will one day attain their end goal. But if I'm being realistic, I don't see it happen in the very near future. Yes.
Thanks. Does anybody have a question for Julia because our closing time is nearing, and maybe I do then, or perhaps Ellie or Kim do, for our third speaker. Julia, we think a lot about the differences and the similarities between innovation and futures thinking, and you highlighted, and your presentation was interesting also in that it highlights, the different perspectives and angles that they take. My impression, though, please correct me if I'm wrong. My impression, though, was that you afforded the same goals to both. You say, this is our situation, the VUCA situation, this is the response, and these are the two tools that are going to help us reach the goal of responding to a VUCA world in a specific way. Do you think, is that right? What are the goals that I'm thinking of now, right?
Yeah, I think sometimes we are just overwhelmed from the situation that we live in. So I think we have so many options everywhere. Is it in our personal life or is it for a company? So sometimes I have a feeling that we are kind of getting lost and we need orientation. And I think by using future studies and methods of innovation management, we can get something on our hand that helps us to get orientation and to start and to continue.
You've said it. So both of them serve continuation, right? In your interpretation?
Yes. But
and which of... Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Julia, for your presentation. I'm just, it's kind of building up on what Maya was asking, that you use, I'm just a little bit puzzled by the language. So you're talking about dealing with the VUCA world, dealing with uncertainty, and then at the end you say embracing uncertainty. Mm-hmm. Do you see a contradiction in that, and how would you respond to that?
Thanks.
Yes, I do. I think it's hard because with turning an obstacle into something useful is something you have to learn. And uncertainties, they make a lot of fear. And I think this kind of dealing with is, like in the beginning I always told you have to deal with it. But I used it because I wanted to show you that it creates a feeling of, there's something I have to work with, there's something that doesn't feel very comfortable. And by, like in the end, making the shift and say, okay, but doing this dilemma flipping, embrace the uncertainty, be open for it, just have a look, use future studies to work under uncertainties, to see that it's really something that you can't get rid of it, and really use it. So that was kind of my kind of dilemma flipping this topic, like from first, we have to be able somehow, and then, okay, let's just try to change our mind and be open to it, embrace it. And I think that's something that we also learned on this conference. In almost every workshop that I've been to, it was like, okay, let's really be open and really embrace the change. That's really something that was stuck in my mind now from I think yesterday. So yeah.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you to our three speakers and the people looking a little bit closer afterwards. Our time is up. Unless there are some really pressing things that people still want to put forward, I want to thank you very much. Also you, Ellie, from further away, for being with us. Kim, Julia, was an interesting morning session. I'm glad I was here, and I wish you happy coffee. This is going to be your busiest coffee break, because you know these people are not, they're going to come and tell you something else about your presentation.